All right, hey guys. In this episode, we're going to be looking at how to stop and start a contract, and then also how to finally destroy the contract. Now, stopping and starting a contract will be useful because, for example, sometimes you might not want any of these functions here to be executed if X condition isn't satisfied. So we'll be using that. We'll be talking about constructors, which I did a little episode on yesterday, and that will be the first thing that we get into now. So we use a constructor method. If you haven't seen the previous episode or you don't know what a constructor is basically a function that only gets called once. It gets called when the contract is initialized and deployed, and doesn't get called after that. So what I want to do is basically store the original contract deployer in its own fixed variable. It's a constant variable kind of. So just before we do anything in the constructor, let's set up a new variable, which will be the deployer. And in this constructor method, I'm going to set the deployer to equal the message.sender. So this is the message sender of the person who literally presses this deploy button. So there's great. Now we've stored this deployer in this fixed number. It doesn't change, fixed address. And now we can start setting conditions for these functions, basically saying, okay, yeah, only the message sender, the original contract deployer, can do X, Y, or Z. So to set up a pause function, we're going to first have to initialize a new variable, which will be a Boolean, and we'll say call that pause. So by default, this is set to false. And the way that we'll write the code, it will be that if this Boolean paused equals false, then you can make changes to the contract, and if it equals true, then you can't make changes. So we're going to set a new function set pause, and this will take it's going to be a public function first of all, and it's going to take in an argument. It's going to take in a Boolean. So we'll go Boolean and then underscore pause. So we're just going to set this pause variable to whatever we input it as. So yeah, if we type into this argument true, then pause will become true. All right then. Also, one other thing, we might want it so that only the person who deploys the contract can toggle the pause. So we'll say use this require, and we're going to require that the message.sender, so the person who presses this function, is equal to the deployer. If that doesn't work, if that evaluates to false, then they'll get this message here, which is you are not the deployer. Cool. So this is all we need to toggle the pause to true and false. And now what we're going to start doing is over here, we're going to set in similar functions. These are basically if-else statements, by the way. If this is true, then you can pass. If it's false, throw this error message. So we're going to set up a similar one over here, except not going to be related to the message sender, but we're going to have it so that whether the contract is paused or not depends on whether we can send money. So we're going to have to require that pause equals true. Should be able to just default leave it as pause, and that then means if pause is true. If not, we'll say the contract is paused. And if the contract isn't paused, we can then send money. So there's all we need to do here. Likewise, we'll do the same bit of code for the transfer function. Colon. So yeah, let's go. Let's deploy this function, see if everything's running correctly. So we're going to send money from, well, first of all, this here is the account which initializes it. So if I go over to this contract, what are we on? We're on 0.6, so we're 5 down. Okay, if I go to the first one and try to send money and try to change this set pause here, if I try to make it true, see, we get this error message over here. Whereas if we go back to the fifth one, if we set it to true, now gets set. So this means we can no longer send money to the contract. So I've done a bit of bad coding here. We want if not pause evaluates to true. I think that should do it. So let's go set it to true, set pause, try send money to the contract. Now there we go. Yeah, it fails here. So you can say not pause, or you can say if pause false. You can also do that. It's the same. It's the same thing. Basically, when do not pause, if pause is false, not false is true, and that means that we then continue to the next line. So that's what it is. So yeah, when not pause and blah blah blah. If we now just make sure everything's running, so we can't send money. Let's set it to false again. So right now it's not paused. Okay, let's send 1 Ethereum to the contract. And if we go into this account here, we're on 100 Ethereum. So if we withdraw it, send to 101. Perfect. Everything's running as it should be. Now we're going to quickly go into how to destroy the contract. So this is important because obviously we don't want the contracts running forever. Okay, so to make the self-destruct function, we're going to need to create a new function. So we'll call that self-destroy. It's not going to take in any arguments for now. I'll show you afterwards how it can take an argument, but it's just going to be public. And what I want to happen is when we do destroy this contract, I want, if there's any remaining balance in the contract, I want it to go back to the original deployer. So money is going to need to be sent to the original deployer. But as you can see here, this deployer, it's not a payable variable. So we're going to make a new variable. It's going to be payable this time, and it's going to be the pay on destroy variable, and that there is going to be equal to the deployer number, deployer address. Now, when I first tried this, I put it without the payable part. Didn't work. So you need to put payable in brackets, parentheses, and then deployer. You need to do that, otherwise it just doesn't work. And then when we do decide to self-destruct it, we're going to use this keyword, which triggers that, and it takes an argument, which is the argument where all the remaining funds get sent to. So here we want it to get sent to send on destroy. So if we save all that, it's all running smoothly. Let's deploy this contract. All right, so everything is correct. I've just made 2 very silly mistakes. So yeah, basically, obviously, if we send 1 Ethereum to the contract, do that now, send 1 Ethereum, send that to the contract. If we then press self-destroy, it will get credited back. Now, obviously, once it's self-destroyed, then none of this works. So you can't send money to the contract. If you do send money, look, it will still take away the balance, but because the contract is destroyed, even if we try to self-destruct, we're not going to get the money back. We're not going to get the money back because the contract's dead. So once a contract is destroyed, do not send money to it. You're not going to be able to recover it. But that is it for today. I hope you learned something from that. And then I think on the next episode, we're going to look at mappings and also structs. So yeah, they're 2 pretty powerful parts of this programming language. And yeah, it really helps advance the amount of capability that Solidity has.